Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gear Priority Podcast. My name is Justin, and I have Lloyd from Garage Growing here today for this partnered episode.
Today, we're chatting with Melo and the gear company allmansright and discussing his approach to designing gear, where he draws inspiration, and what he aims to achieve with each item.
Welcome to the podcast, Liv. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from the PX, and thank you for having me on here. Psych.
Looking forward to it. And I think Lloyd was mentioning earlier that you moved into a new space. You're in like a new workshop where you guys are designing gear, making gear. Is that right?
Yeah, we so far this year we've hopped from our apartment to a studio down the street to now a bigger one so far. We're outgrowing things quickly and just, happy to be in a new space more conducive to like working,
I'm excited to kind of hear about some of the like your design process. Like I've been using your products for a while. I think people who follow me on my YouTube channel have seen the Holster Steak Sack, which in my mind was like, as soon as I used it, I was like, it's kind of crazy. Like, why hasn't anybody done this before? It just makes getting steaks out and putting them back just so much easier. So it's those little things. I'm kind of like, I'm really interested to kind of dive into your brain, get an idea of where you draw inspiration from, how you go about your design process, how you look, even not only at gear, but just kind of like the world in that respect. So I think you have some interesting perspectives based on my deep dive. But before we kind of get into all that, you want to kick us off, Lloyd, with some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, Justin, I'd love to. Liv, these are not the hard hitting ones. These are the soft hitting ones. But equally as important, if you could have one minor superpower, what would that be? So like none of this no like saving the world, no like time travel, but like a specific like minor superpower.
Oh, I do want to breathe underwater.
Breathe underwater, that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably going to be like super useful. Living in New York,
Yeah.
Would that be in lieu of like going scuba diving kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, one, I love to swim. I just love being in the water, and as long as I can spend there, the better, But then Lloyd said minor, so I'm like, that means I have to pick something that's like completely useless for everybody else but me, Like, what does that leave you with, like Coast Guard or like what is that, Coast Guard, lifeguard, or So it's just, I guess, minor superpower is just to benefit me, what I like enjoy doing, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good one. Did you have one in mind, Lloyd?
Oh, my answer for this question is always the same, which is to be able to eat as much food or as little food as I want. So, like if I'm, in a hurry, like all I would need to eat is like a Cheerio and I'd be full. Or if it was like Thanksgiving and I wanted to eat like hundreds of pounds of food, I could do that without getting full. And my body would just like stay the same, like I wouldn't be like sick or destroyed afterwards. It would just be like, yeah,
You'd have a way better relationship with food than I probably have right now.
No, I mean, that's so he can have any relationship with food. That he wants that superpower, I think.
And then, think about the ultralight backpacking abilities of like all these other suckers would be out there carrying like pounds of food, and I'd be carrying like, 3 Jolly Ranchers, and I'd be good for like a month.
Yeah, like that's some Frodo stuff right there. It's like you're like eating elf bread.
The elf bread, yeah.
That's what you want.
Liv, it's referred to as lemon bread.
All right, let's go to the second one. Liv, what's the most important item for you for getting a good night's sleep when you're out on trail?
Most important item. Just sleeping bag. Easy. That's an easy one. Sleeping bag. I mean, I've done with like bare minimum for all of it. No pillow. I've done the no pillow thing. I've done like, the foam mat. I mean, I still do the foam mat, the no pillow thing. But for sure, without a sleeping bag, you could, that's dangerous. So 100% sleeping bag.
So you're a minimalist. yeah, no pillow, no thick sleeping pad. I'm definitely more of a wimp when it comes to sleep systems and that.
Oh, I mean, I just, I haven't met the inflatable pad that can deal with your boy. And just like the foam ones, are just, they're no nonsense. They just work, multi-use. They weigh as much, like, full foam one weighs as much as an inflatable one anyway. I think I just like people looking at me confused in the morning, wondering like how I made it out, like how I made it through the night. I think that's what I live for.
Yeah, nice. And number 3, uphill or downhill?
Uphill.
Uphill, nice.
They all suck. I feel like they both suck. But I'd rather uphill than downhill any day, because that's dangerous, right? Like one of them destroys your knees and ankles. The other one, you just get tired more. But if you fall, I think you'll be good headed up versus down. I don't know.
I'm on the uphill train too. I agree with you. I think Lloyd, it seems like you're on the downhill train.
Oh, absolutely. No.
It's because he skis.
I do not ski.
Otherwise,
I take the approach that
get if I just skied uphill.
If I fall going downhill, I'll just end up at the bottom faster.
I feel like you must just be durable and not have bad knees like I do.
I think that's probably part of it. I do have good knees at this particular juncture, but like uphill, I just like it's so much harder.
Okay, but like, what's the reward downhill versus the reward uphill?
Liv, I'm doing what's easier, not what's more rewarding.
Gotcha. But I mean, okay, reward downhill is probably like fast food.
Yeah.
Away home.
Yeah. Maybe some water if you're dehydrated.
Yeah, maybe some water. That's true. Okay. I might maybe next question before I become a convert.
Okay. Liv, are you a lazy morning hiker in terms of like someone who likes to sleep in, or are you someone who's like up and hitting the trail right away?
No, it'll be like 10 and I'm still like defrosting. Like, at 5 a.m., like from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., I'm just holding my pee in, so I don't have to like get out of my tent any sooner than that. And then like, yeah, it's just, I guess when it's just when like my cramp muscles like unfurl like a flower. That's when the sun hits my campsite. That's when I bloom. So let's go with that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now I'm now like I'm out of my tent immediately and like on trail, but I definitely like used to be someone who the only thing that would get me out of the tent is like the heat of like the midday sun of like, when it starts getting to like 10 or 11 o'clock and you're just baking because the sun is just right over you and you're like sweating in your sleeping bag.
Exactly. No, I don't quite let it get to that, but
just before. Nice.
All right, let's jump into some chat about design, about allmansright. Lloyd, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, Liv, I'd love just to start for those that aren't familiar with allmansright. Can you run us through the products that you make currently?
Yeah, we make a 35-liter pack. We make steak sacks, tough sack, bear hang bags, and then a crossbody bag, which is an alternative to like a fanny pack. Let's say. I think that's all. And then we do like several other like collaboration products with like other brands to bring in some of their aesthetics or just to try something new from our product lineup.
Yeah, that's awesome. Liv, I know it's been fun to see all the collaborations that you guys are doing. We've got some questions about that for you later on, because I think that is just like a really unique aspect of allmansright too. Is just really how like you've got your staple of products that are awesome and that you're finding really neat ways to collaborate with other makers in the space, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to learn from from other folks. We're trying to do the same who have been doing it for much longer.
So a lot of bag like carrying things.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of your
carry goods.
Maybe you can get into in a couple of minutes if you share those, just kind of like the origin story, how you got into like making gear and specifically backpacking gear and camping gear, and maybe why you kind of went towards the carrying items for that.
Yeah, for sure. I learned about backpacking, like what was like late 2018, I think it was, or yeah, no, like 2000, early 2018. Immediately went on a backpacking trip with like used gear. So of course it was heavy, like I think my second trip had like maybe like 40 something pounds on me. All I remember is like puking at the top of a hill and like having a 55 liter like pack to where like the seams are like kind of like coming a little bit undone. I remember I had batteries for a point and shoot that I still don't even think I used those batteries. But yeah, and then after that, I started looking at like my friend had mentioned, he's like, oh, watch you go down the UL rabbit hole. Little did he know that he was right, but how far down is like he couldn't even imagine it. But then, I started looking at the gear and learning about like, people's perspective about it, like what were the benefits. And then found about like a whole community of folks who were like making gears for themselves, and in many cases making it for other people. So I went ahead and bought fabric and started like just experimenting, making like bought fabric and like I think it was like a $30 sewing machine and like secondhand, and started like making gear for myself, small pouches and things. They got further into it, and I just couldn't find a pack that I absolutely loved, that looked like the things I like to use, and until like I started like looking at gear from like Korea and Japan, and got inspired, and I was like, you know what, this kind of gear I want to start making, and made a pack for myself. Then I made one for Jen, and then eventually going on like a big, what I would call a big trip, which was like 2 weeks out out in Colorado, and doing like 100 something miles, right? Like that was big for me. So I took gear out there, and I got to hang out in a lot of the places that thru hikers hung out at, and I got to meet the community. And like before that trip, I'd never even seen a thru hiker. Like I've only heard of them in like videos, or seen them in videos rather, but never like in person really. Um, and anyway, the community was dope. I met somebody who was like, wow, your packet's cool. It's super tiny. Like, how do you even like? This is me paraphrasing. I remember, I remember his exact word. He's like, "How do these mother effers just pull up with these tiny ass packs?" That was literally what he said. And anyway, so my first customer I met at a hostel there. He just finished his like Triple Crown up in Salida, Colorado, and he was like, if you make a pack, I'll buy it from you. And so 6 months later, I think he ended up buying a pack from me. So I flipped that, bought more material, started flip those, made pack, and 3 years later, we're here.
That's awesome. When you were starting out, were there people that you were kind of getting advice from for making packs, or are there like templates that you were finding online or to get like the cuts and everything for the materials?
No, I mean, part of the process for me to like for designing anything is you study as much as you can, right? So I would hold any pack I can, even just like school bags, and just look at construction. I'll go to REI and like inspect absolutely everything. I'm turning bags inside out, like, looking at seams, studying how they do it. Um, I was making gear before I'd even seen like another ultralight backpack like in person. I think the lightest I'd seen before that was like an Osprey. Um, I didn't have really like any or didn't even know anyone. Like I said, this is like I started making gear. I think it was like a month after my very first backpacking trip. Like I didn't know anything about anyone. I didn't know who was who, what was what. Yeah, like who all the players were or anything like that, who to reach out to. So I just knew I was crafty, and always had to believe that like, I possible for me to be the dumbest person in the world and this and there's somebody and there's definitely dumber people that be making things happen out there. So like why couldn't I figure it out? Um yeah, so yeah, just give it a try, give it a go.
Is that something that you've encountered for like like that you've done in other aspects of your life where you've been like, you know what, there's nothing that works for me or that like really resonates with me, so I'm just gonna make it myself? Or was backpacking the kind of the first thing where you really kind of dove into that?
No, I've always had that spirit about like anything I was really interested in. Um Not necessarily. A lot of the times, I would find stuff that I would like, um, and there were some things. And don't misunderstand. There were some things in the backpack in like ultralight backpacking world that I did like. I just couldn't afford it. Also, I had more time than I had like money on hand, and at that time. Um. Anyway, yeah, and that's always the spirit that like I have for things. I just always kind of want to create the things I own, and even before like a long standing dream of mine is that like I live in this home like furnished with like furniture that I've designed. Like there's a car that I had something to do with, like that's always been like a big dream of mine. Yeah, just living in a world with like things that I've had a hand in creating somehow. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think they're going to be better, but I just often had to create like my own things growing up.
Yeah, Liv, that's really neat. And I also just like think that connection to the physical things around you is such like I don't know, it's like wonderful to have that personal connection to one's gear. I know that's something that I feel a lot when I go backpacking. Is like when I take out my stakes, like I'm not just like taking out a random piece of gear that I have no relationship with. I'm taking out like the coolest stake bag that's ever existed. And like when I've got my little when I've got my craft on my shoulder pouch, like, like you're coming with me on trips, and that's cool. Like you don't know you are, but you are.
I dig that. I dig that. I've always loved people who name like assign things a gender sometimes, right? Like they were like, she's coming with me. Like I love when people like sort of like give objects like that kind of regard. In the same light, I absolutely hate when people get to camp and like hike their backpack into the ground, like like this thing has been like burdening them this whole time, and I'm just like, well, you brought it there.
Yeah, it's not that thing's fault. Yeah. Well, Liv, one of the things that's always struck me about all of your gear is just the real like level of detail that you bring to everything. Like it's I think with a number of your products, like I never really thought that they were pieces of gear that needed to be like re-looked at. And you've added a certain design element that like made me go, oh my God, that's like takes a product that's like could just be kind of basic and elevates it in a really new and interesting way. Yeah, so that's something that I've always felt about you and your designing. And having this is a little bit of a leading question because I know some of the information around this, but I know you went to Parsons, and I know that you were designing before outdoor gear. But like what like made you jump all in on ultralight?
I just wasn't too happy designing what I was designing, and like even before I finished school, I just wasn't too keen on it. Like I was doing furniture, and I think I was doing furniture at a time where I was like, you know what, I think I'm just gonna like I started shifting away from the notion that like design could like help people. right? Because all I kept seeing was like vain projects, and just like just design as a capitalist tool. You know what I mean? Which is like so I just I found, and I was still and I was still idealistic even past 25. So like I was like, this stuff ain't for me. Like, I just want to do something more meaningful with it. And yeah, that wasn't it. So yeah, and so when I started doing outdoor gear, something like I truly, I really loved getting reconnected with the outdoors. And and I've always been like obsessed with backpacks and like carry goods for that matter, actually. That like it just it just awakened something in me, or like like it was just dormant there. This is just what I wanted to do, actually, the entire time. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. It kind of seems like you kind of came together with it. It wasn't like it was almost serendipitous as far as what like getting into the design of backpacks and carry goods.
Right. I mean, I've always, I've been an outdoorsy person, even like, even though I was disconnected with it. Like I'm from like, the countryside of the DR, where you're constantly in the woods and you're running around. And then when I got disconnected from that, like just from nature and all that, by living in New York City, I became, I guess, second, like the other thing that I love to do naturally, just start making things, you know what I mean? And study design. And then all those things just kind of came crashing together.
Is it when you are designing things, do you have like a design philosophy that you kind of stick to, or like are there some kind of like pillars of design that you always want to be achieving when you're designing a new product, and like boxes that you want to be ticking?
One, I not so much. I think I tend to be like super flexible, like sort of I don't have much like design philosophies, other than like, I just um I just I don't want to say it just needs to make sense like visually, but what I do, sort of what I don't do, is try to design something that like it's already like been done. Um I try not to have any interest in those things.
I think something that I've noticed is that unique aspect for sure. Like you said, you try to do things different. You try to look at it from um, potentially a different perspective.
I do really consider my process, though. I have more of a process than philosophy, I think. Sort of like formula that I need to like that I like to sort of follow to to come to the solution that I try to come to. And the first one starts with like research, right? So I I I try to gain those 10,000 hours, and for the duration of the project, right? Like I try to become an expert as quickly as possible. Um, uh, and in that research, a strong proponent is that you sort of have to add the human element into it, right? Like, um, if, for example, there's this example that what I was given in school, that like if that of this project where people were designing tools for people that have like arthritis, right? And for them to understand what that feels like, they had to dip their fingers in cold water for a very long. Like I've never forgotten that. So like I always try to like incorporate like the human experience into a product. Like the function. I'll give you the steak sack, for example. Like anything to hold steaks, right? You can literally just wrap it with rubber bands, right? Um, and there's a million closures that you can do with it, right? But I try to consider what is the most natural way that somebody can try to open something. What is the most natural way that somebody would try to stuff a sack, right? What is the most carried like combination of steak sack, from what I've learned through watching. And I sat there with paper and all those steaks, and I and then you add some tolerances that, like, for example, my hands are pretty big. So I figured there's definitely bigger. So try to do my hands plus, right? Like, and work from there, and just try to like really envision like the just the human proponent or the human experience and in the product, right? Because that's ultimately what you're trying to do, like connect the human to a product, you know, um, that will probably do a function.
Do you find yourself like visualizing these scenarios like more, or are you also like getting out into kind of like the physical world within like observing people as well? Like, where are you drawing kind of the different pieces of inspiration from?
I think it has to be both. I think it has to be both. I think about how I do it a lot, how I would do things. I asked the folks around me how they would do this, how they would approach it. I've even like sent out small surveys on like Instagram, like asking people questions. But I try to ask all the questions about function wise, but I also try to ask questions um, like and this may sound silly, uh, like pulling on this knob, like how does that feel on for your finger, like, or like what is it that you don't like about your pack, and like if there's something your pack would do for you, like that no one's ever been able to do for you, like what would it be, And I don't always go with like just especially hikers, or they have all their idiosyncrasies, but you pick and choose the one that seem like more broad and things. But I think I'm just trying to find out like nuance uses for things, like just the nuance things, and that's when you find like, and I think like that's when you find those moments of connection that for people, like that's when you hear like, oh, this works so well. That's how things become favorite to you. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, I'll bring it back to the steak set, but like, you like the shape of the steak set, right? I sat there with a bunch of shape. I did a bunch of shapes, right? And then one thing that I found with the square ones is that the steaks would cross in every direction, and then they would. That's how the punctures would happen in the steak set. So then I thought about just uh, like how would the steak fit, and then I thought about how people would hold the steak and try to fit it in there, and as you can see, that's literally the shape of the steak sack, and that's how I ultimately came to the shape, you know the ham, basically. Even our stuff sacks, like the size was literally designed around the hand reaching in, like it wasn't too big where like it would hold things with things like bob around in there, but the very smallest one, it was very much designed about around being able to reach the bottom of more than anything.
With the steak sack, just to kind of keep on that train for a little bit, was there like an event where you're like, I need a way to carry my steaks that's better, or were you kind of like, why a steak sack in that, as opposed to something else?
Well, I noticed issues with because I made myself the little square one, early on in my literally when I started like making gear, and not to diss anybody, but like if that was literally the first design I came up with, and that's what you're selling to folks, and like maybe you need to like up it a little bit. Um, so the square one is like the most basic thing ever, and I made it, and I saw the mistakes with it, and the problems with it. So I just wanted to solve it. Um, I Yeah, and also I designed like my little Dyneema line. I also out of like the necessity to give like customers just a lower entry point into like into our brand. I wanted to tackle like the small stuff. I wanted to let people and also know that like you know that we have like we that we have like I don't want to say we have the sauce to basically to basically take something that like REI gives you with absolutely everything you buy, a stuff sack, and try to make it something like that people really love.
Liv, you mentioned this a little while ago, but that you draw some inspiration from, or have drawn some inspiration from certain like Japanese designers and such. And I feel like this is, I don't know, not a secret within the ultralight industry, but like that Japan has like a wildly quickly emerging ultralight scene, both from
sick over there.
There's a ton of thru hikers that are both hiking in Japan, also coming and hiking US trails. And kind of with that, there's a huge demand for, just like ultralight goods from the US market, but then also just this really like blossoming cottage scene in Japan. Can you just talk a little bit about like kind of like the here?
I mean, honestly, to call it blossoming, I think what's blossoming is like our knowledge of it. I think that thing's been there for a minute. And I'm only saying that just because I don't necessarily think that they develop things faster or just like think differently. But I'm willing to say that like sort of like the knowledge base has been there for longer even. Japan has a strong culture of outdoorism, perhaps even longer standing than this country's, which is fairly young country compared to Japan. I mean, didn't we invent the national park though? But however, but we didn't invent getting outside. And I'll tell you what, one thing besides their strong like outdoors culture, one thing that they have is like it's like sort of like a devotion to innovation, right? Like just like sameness is almost like it's a plague, right? Like, out there. So I went out there for my inspiration. Like there's this pack by this brand called Yamatomichi. I fell in love with it. Like I didn't want anything else but that bag. So I made it for myself. You know what I mean? And then, after using it for a while, I started noticing how I could improve it and sort of and mixed it with like my other favorite pack, which is the Z Packs Nero. And those two packs are like I would say like extremes, right, of each other, because one is like it's pretty pretty featured versus the other one that is like pretty bare bones, right? Like isn't the Nero where like you can't even like unbuckle the roll top? It's just a string you keep twisting in place. Like, but I merged those two packs along with like the philosophy that like Gossamer Gear has on their like super tiny pack. They have like this super tiny pack made out of like tent material, and they say that like if you wonder if it could carry it, maybe you shouldn't get this pack or something like that. Anyway, but what that one taught me was like how low you can go on materials, right? And so then all of those three packs came together and for me and gave me my very first product, but yeah, Japan, I just love the way they do things. They're it's just clean work, always embracing newness. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like there's a low key obsession with like U.S. culture, and also we have a low key obsession with their culture. So there's just like this is we like each other. We just can't tell each other.
Yeah, that's real. And Liv, I know I told you earlier that we were going to circle back to this, but I feel like you've always got a lot of really cool collaborations that you're working on. I guess just off the top of my head, thinking about with like Dangle Supply, with like Hiker Kind. It feels like there's a lot of cool things that you're always got going in the works. Like, how do you pick these different brands that you work with? And what kind of like interests you about the collaboration model?
It's different things. For example, with different ones. So, for example, sometimes I'm just excited, really excited about the brand, and would love to sort of like learn from them and how they do things. Or I like their aesthetics, and I can see how like I can contribute to sort of like their product line, either with an adaptation of mine, or you know, or something that we can just design from scratch. And then sometimes I'm just down for the challenge of like improving one of their products, right? Like when Nango Supply hit me up, they wanted me to take a look at their weird wallet, and I did, and I I immediately saw how I could make it, how I could, at least in my aesthetic, improve upon it. And started, working at it and prototyping for it and stuff like that. And then other projects like where Hiker Kind, we did a bottle bag, and for that one, we were just excited to sort of be outdoor brands from New York City and working together and just like um, sort of they could give their customers um, something techy and something functional and something with a bit of my hand in it. Um, and I got a chance to sort of like dive into what is a very like I'm gonna say persistent aesthetic, which is like what Hiker Kind um, puts out.
Do you find it hard to kind of turn your brain off when you're looking, like just kind of like in the world, just looking at things? Like, do you always have that design switch turned on, or do you turn it off every once in a while and you're like, okay, I don't always need to be like thinking how I could tweak this or that? And
I don't go around thinking that I could make everything better. Oh my gosh, like who am I even? I totally understood. Like, yo, when I was a kid, when I was younger, right? Whenever I couldn't figured, like when I didn't understand something, I'd be like, yo, that's stupid, right? But like now that I'm older, I'm like, I was stupid, So I don't walk around thinking that I can I could come up with a solution better. With enough time, perhaps, and but that would include like, again, those $10,000, like I said, but no, I don't go around thinking. Um, However, I'm not able to turn it off. No, I'm not like I'll be the guy you find me at a restaurant like flipping a chair over to see who the make is, to see how they put that together. You know, like I'll be looking at and then I'm always wondering what the design choices of people were and why they are, and like I just um when once I discovered that there's such a thing as industrial design, I started like seeing the world differently, right? Like there's a person behind absolutely every product. You're like looking around, and there's like a thought process. There's a personality, um, I think you also get something that's like X-ray vision. So like you're able to like look at a product, and then you can more or less envision how it's like put together. So you can like really, really almost see through it, And so yeah, those are things that I just can't turn on. But it's never like in a negative way. Like I absolutely love what I do, and I can't imagine myself doing like anything other than design. I think it's super important. I mean, it's obviously very important to humanity, but like, I'm happy to be like just as curious as I am, right? Of like the world around me. Sometimes like I'll see something cool somewhere, and I'm like, why does nobody else think this is cool? Like, do you guys just go around living life like not seeing cool stuff, And it's just like it's only cool to me, I guess. Or like and those like me, but no, I love see life through a designer's eyes. I even think it makes me more sympathetic to like other people sometimes.
I think empathy and compassion are two things I see a lot in designers, because you have to, like you were saying before, you have to put yourself into another person's shoes. You have to be thinking about how they're going to use it, and the compassion, empathy are just like very important ways to be able to do that. So it's always interesting hearing about that aspect of design.
No, absolutely.
Liv, two random thoughts, but one, your collaboration with Dangle Supply on that weed wallet, like it made me almost wish that I smoked so that I could just have a reason to purchase that. I didn't buy it, but and two, yeah, I think that like what you were saying of like having curiosity, but kind of like leaving the judgment out of that, I feel like is a really wonderful attribute. Like, I don't do this with gear as much, but I find myself doing it with businesses. It's just being like, I'm curious as to like what their business model is, or like how do they make this work, or like how do you come upon some tiny little shop that's like a brick and mortar, and you haven't seen anyone go in there in 10 years, and you're like, what's their thing,
I do the same thing, but I'm in New York City, so like I figure like if I can't figure out what a business is doing, they're probably just laundering money. It's a spot, like it's like an underground club. I'm just saying, who's out here repairing cell phones? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't have a business with like 2 cell phones to repair a month. I'm sorry. Anyway,
like a pager shop or something like that.
Nobody come for me.
No, but I think that's a really like an amazing approach of that, and I feel like that's something that I think radiates a lot within the cottage community in general. Is just that notion of like a lot of curiosity, a lot of designs formed from inquisitiveness. And like, yeah, a lot of inspiration drawn from a lot of different places. So really cool to hear that perspective from you.
But before we let you go, Liv, is there anything coming down the pipe from allmansright that we should keep in mind?
Nothing immediately. Like I would always just ask people to stay tuned, right? Because like my intention in all of this is just find a new way of doing one industry, doing gear differently, just doing just sort of like, like I call ourselves a lab, right? Because we're heavy on experimentation, heavy on like design process, and I would just say stay tuned. Like there are definitely things that keep me up at night, and that's because like I'm super excited about how excited you are gonna be about it. If that makes any sense. So just hang tight.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, and I'll post like links to your Instagram as well as website, and then the Garage Run Gear, allmansright shop as well. So yeah, people can go check out the show notes or the video description if they're watching on YouTube and keep track. Do you post a lot of kind of like some teasers of kind of the experimentation on Instagram or anywhere else?
Yeah, sometimes like whenever like I want to be like whenever I'm feeling proud of myself, I'll put like a little teaser of a product. But for the past year, for the past few months or maybe year and change, like we've just been having our heads down trying to get some trying to stay alive as a company, and we're starting to now absolutely like maybe figure some of this outdoor business thing out, and I really my intentions, like I said from the beginning, is not to make sameness, it's strive for newness. So just look out.
Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Definitely some interesting insights into design, and we'll be in touch. We'll chat some more soon. So thanks, Liv, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yo, thank you guys. It was a good chat. It was super fun.